My name is Brooke Schumann. I'm with the Office of Alumni Relations at TCU, and I work with our career programming, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves, and we'll get started in a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terrence Hood, and I'm Assistant Director for Alumni and Student Athletes in the TCU Career Center. And so I want to welcome you all to our session today with our very special guest. I feel like she's not really a guest. She's been with us throughout the month of July. So we're just honored to have Hallie Crawford join us once again, certified career coach and founder of Create Your Career Path. So Hallie, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for sharing your time today.
You are so welcome. It's absolutely my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here. And as I was saying just a moment ago, you know, we're all getting used to this virtual thing, and I feel like I've really gotten into the swing of things with this. So we really appreciate your time, everyone, being here today to talk about how to really take control of your career transition and manage it more effectively. And obviously, during this time of coronavirus, it can feel more overwhelming, or even more so, gosh, can I even think about a career change or transition? Like, this is really a bad time to do so. So we're going to be talking about how to manage any of these fears or concerns that you have during this time, but also as things get better, as well as some action steps that we want you to take in order to get prepared for making the career transition when it's time for you to do so. So as Terrence said, I'm Hallie Crawford. I'm a certified career coach, speaker, and author. Our company is based in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'll do a little bit more intros as we go here, tell you just a little bit of background about me. But first, I want to talk for a moment about just career change. Here's kind of the bad news, if you will, and I'm sure most of you can relate to this, which is why you're here today. Making a career change is one of the most 20 or top 20, or in that list, if you will, of one of the most stressful things that can happen in our lives. So please know, first of all, right out of the box, that if this is stressful, it causes a lot of anxiety for you, that you are not alone. It's completely normal to feel like career transition is a really big deal. It's normal because our jobs and our careers, like, they're such a part of our identity, or at least they can be for a lot of people. We spend a lot of time there. And a lot of times for people, at least part of their identity can be wrapped up in who they are as a professional. So if we're making any change in this area, just like any other change in our lives, it can feel like a really big deal and cause a lot of stress and anxiety. That's the bad news. The good news is that the majority of our clients, and we truly believe this is the case for most people, that at least around 90% of our clients will tell us that they are their biggest obstacle, if you will, to achieving their career goals and getting started on their career transition and making it effective. So the good news is that we have control over ourselves, right? We can't control external circumstances, what happens with the economy, et cetera, but we can control what we do and how we manage our transition. So bottom line is, we just need to work on getting out of our own way first. And I want you all to know that once you start to do that, the rest of your obstacles and things that might be getting in the way for you, they will start to fall away much more easily. You'll get over them and move past them much more easily once you start to get out of your own way. So it is possible to make a change. We just want you to know that. And it is possible to make a career change during coronavirus, by the way. We know that this is going to be lasting a while longer. So we want you to know that you can make a shift. 95% of our clients, they figure it out very quickly, and they're able to make their transition effectively and smoothly. So that's the good news. And just really quickly, we wanted to tell you, too, that well, I'm sure you all are hearing about layoffs and furloughs and that kind of thing because of COVID. We have had clients getting jobs left and right. A client got a job just a couple of weeks ago. She started at Amazon, like virtually, not working in a warehouse, but, in operations there. And a client got a job at a nonprofit. Another one in Chicago got a job in marketing communications. So the good news is, especially after Labor Day, we have actually seen the job market start to pick up a little bit. People are kind of getting back into the groove a little bit more. And we just want you to know that people out there are hiring. So it is possible to make a change. We do want you, if you take a look at this next slide, we want you to be persistent and patient. We do want you to know that career transition at any time, regardless or inside or outside of COVID, and especially during this time of COVID, it does require some time. It does require a lot of effort on your part to get prepared to make the transition and to work through it. It requires patience, and even more so during this time as well, because job searches are taking a little bit longer than they normally would. You want to add at least like 2 or 3 months onto your search than you would have otherwise. And it also takes persistence and being practical and realistic at the same time too. So it is possible. We want you to know that. The key is that you need to be patient with yourself as much as you can. Be organized, which is part of what we're going to be talking about today, and just be persistent with it. Don't give up. The little kind of story background I wanted to give you just really quickly. So this is our website. I founded my company 20 years ago. I know I sound like I'm 12. I'm actually 47, and a few more gray hairs under here than you might be able to see. But when I started my company 20 years ago, it took me several years to transition into, being a full-time entrepreneur. I was fearful for about at least a full year in the job that I had at the time, and I stayed miserable in a job that was not a fit for me. At that time, I lived in Chicago, and it was just too scary to think about, so I just kept pushing it to the side. Finally, I decided I needed to do something, and I hired a coach and worked with her for about a year to figure out what I wanted to do with my career in the long run. At the time, I was in marketing communications. And once I decided I wanted to become a coach, it took about a year, give or take, to take the classes and get a certification. And about another year and a half at a part-time job that I got after the marketing communications position in order to stay financially viable and pay my bills. I got a part-time position where I was working Monday through Thursday while I grew my coaching practice, and that was about another year and a half. And after that, at that point, I was able to go ahead and not just launch my business, but go full-time with my business. So the point is that for me, and I'm not saying it's going to take this long for you, but for me, all told, if I look at the whole process, it took me about 4 years if you include that full year of being fearful and scared about the whole thing and not doing anything. But I would go back and do it all again in a heartbeat, even if it took twice as long, because securing and being in the right job that is meant for you, that you feel passionate about and excited about, is so worth it. So please know that regardless of how long your career change might take or your transition, it is so well worth it. Just stay the course and stay persistent with it, okay? So here's what we are going to talk about today. Here's our agenda. We want to discuss with you how to identify and start to manage around those fears so that you don't let those get in the way, whatever those practical considerations are, as well as those intangible fears that we all have, understandably. We want to talk about how to identify and understand what your transferable skills are in order to make the transition more successful, talk about branding yourself, and also managing your transition in terms of goals, getting a support system, and leveraging or increasing or improving, I should say, your confidence. And then finally, talk about how to implement that plan, creating a routine and a schedule for yourself so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, and also so that you stay the course and don't let fear get in the way and kind of slack off a little bit. So just really quickly, as Brooke had mentioned, we are recording our presentation today, so you will get a copy of that. If anyone would like a copy of our PowerPoint slides so you don't feel like you have to frantically write everything down, just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. We would be more than happy to share those with you.
And Hallie, I just put in the chat feature the link to the Dropbox for the Facing the Fear handout that you've provided.
Thank you, Brooke. I totally forgot to mention that. So the handout is in the chat box. Thank you for that. Perfect. All right, cool. This is why it's good to have multiple people on the call as well, because it's hard to remember everything. All right. So let's talk about the first thing that we want you to do. And I'm not just saying this, in terms of this is the first thing we're going to talk about today, but this is the very first thing that I want everyone to do when they're considering getting into job search mode and considering a career transition or change. Because if you just go out there and start taking action without really sitting back for a moment and thinking about, okay, what are my limiting beliefs, or what's going on in my head, what my fears are, anything else that might be going on, your action items are not going to be nearly as effective as they would be otherwise. So you really need to take this step, even though it may feel like, oh, I'm fine, I can just skip over this. We want you to identify and understand what your fears and obstacles are right out of the gate, because understanding and awareness is the first step, and then you can manage them more effectively as a result of doing that. So I attended this, it was an in-person workshop, and it was years ago, around growing a small business, basically. And one of the things that they were talking about at the workshop was, what are your beliefs and your feelings about money and making money and charging people for money? And it was a really cool exercise. And to kind of translate it to what we're talking about today, what he had us do, which I think is perfect for career transition as well, is he basically said, okay, get out your pen and paper, and when I say the word money, I want you to write down everything that comes to your mind right away, whether it's thoughts, feelings, beliefs, whatever it is about the word money, okay? And we want you to do the same thing here. When you think of career change or career transition, what comes to your mind first? And we want you to just journal about this when we're done today or tonight before you go to bed. Just spit out everything that comes to your mind. It could be words. It could be analogies or a metaphor. It could be thoughts or feelings. Anything that comes to mind first, you want to just write all of these things down. Don't think about it too much. Go with your gut instinct. Because what you want to notice as you start to write those out, and this is what was interesting for me, is I had no idea how many negative thoughts or feelings I actually had around money, and they started spilling out on the page. And it was like, oh, if I'm trying to make money, like how is this going to happen when I've got these limiting beliefs? So you want to write these down and journal about them for a moment, and just give yourself, 5 minutes at the most. 2 minutes is probably fine. And then you want to identify, okay, which ones are positive, and kind of categorize them, which ones are positive and which are negative. And you can start to think about, if you want to, because I find this helpful, is to kind of uncover where these negative ones came from so that you can, kind of dig a little bit deeper there. But then identify which are just flat out irrational fears and which are valid. So for example, if you have a fear or concern about money, and I don't want to, quit my job without having something else, or which of course nobody wants to do. Or for example, if you're worried about I can't make as much money as I do now at the next job, that's a valid concern. But instead of letting that irrational fear hold you back, go out and do some research about what kind of money you can make at this next job. So the idea here is to understand which are fears that are just kind of underneath the surface, that aren't rational, that are holding you back from taking any action, versus which are things that are valid. So for example, if finances are an issue, do you need to start saving some money, or is there something you can do about that financial piece that you can handle it or manage it? The idea is to get into action and do something about it, not let it keep you stuck, if you will, or allow you to remain stuck. So identify the rational versus irrational fears, and with the rational ones especially, you want to develop an action plan. And then finally, you also want to identify the effect of these fears. How do you behave as a result? So for example, do you not do the research you need to do to look at other possible job ideas? Have you not spoken to your boss about making a transition within your organization or asking for a promotion? So you also want to write down, okay, what are the steps that I have not taken, or the things I haven't done as a result of these fears, because that will help you uncover what's going on and what you need to do differently. So here are some of the most common obstacles that we have found with our clients, and we'll do this first poll here in just a moment. There are things that range from anything from lack of confidence, negative thinking. They've got naysayers in their lives that are just telling them, oh, stay put, you can't do anything different, and they keep them in that fear place. And some people will flat out say, I'm just not committed enough for whatever reason. I don't have enough time, or I'm not making enough time, or I don't know what my goals are. I don't know what the next step is, what the next job is that I want. So there's lots of different obstacles that come up for people. So Brooke, if we could launch this first poll here, that would be fantastic. So our first poll is, what is your greatest fear? Is it financial, which of course we would completely understand? Is it that, I'm afraid of job searching, I don't want to do it? Or the difficult economy? And it's probably hard to decide between just one of these. If it were me, I might put all of them. So just know that you're not alone. Thank you guys for participating in it. This is great so far. All right, good. Brooke, it looks like we've got almost everybody. We're getting there.
Yeah. Can you see the poll right now?
I actually can.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm looking back and forth to everybody just because I have a split screen here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. All right. Well,
so
we'll
we've got
go.
52% job searching.
Yeah. Let's share results.
Okay, good. All right, so thank you all for participating in this. So job searching, what's so interesting to me about this, right, is some of us might say, gosh, it's probably going to be the tough economy or whatever, but job searching is the highest one, and that's regardless of the economy. So completely understand, please know that our clients tell us this all the time. We have had, I would say, no one in the 20 years that we have been coaching ever say, I love job searching. I'm so excited to do this. It's intimidating for people. Networking isn't always their favorite thing. So you're not alone. We completely understand. Let's talk about one of the obstacles that we find with a lot of our clients that tends to get in their way of the job searching piece plus everything else. So we wanted to mention a couple of things obstacle-wise, and then we're going to give you some tools and tips to kind of manage them and overcome them. And just by the way, too, we do have some job search specific advice as well. So that's going to help with the majority of you, too, who are concerned about that piece of it. So you're in the right spot. So one of the things we have found with a lot of our clients is they have this sense of what is called imposter syndrome, off and on during the course of their career or the course of their day or their week at work. It's basically a phenomenon where people are not fully able to internalize their accomplishments, and they feel like a fraud in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not that strong of a word for you. But we all are taught to be humble, right? And in some ways, we all kind of discount our success and, always say, oh, it was my team that did it, or, oh, I just got lucky, or I got a lucky break, or whatever it is. And the imposter syndrome is something that we want to work on managing if we have any of these kind of thoughts that go on in our heads, because when we're in job search mode, you've got to be very confident and be willing to sell yourself. I can't tell you how many clients will tell us, I don't really want to write my resume, or I don't feel like that language that we're writing on my resume is accurate. And I'm telling them, no, it is accurate. It's just more salesy than you might be comfortable with. But it is, your resume and your LinkedIn it's a marketing document. That's what it is supposed to sound like. So it's supposed to be that way. So just know that if this is you in any way, shape, or form, even if it's not all that frequent, you want to start managing around it and kind of pushing it aside. Statistics show that at least 2 out of 5 people, even when they're incredibly successful and senior level in their career, they consider themselves frauds in some way, shape, or form, and some of the time in their professional lives. And 70% of people do feel like an imposter at one time or another. So normal if you feel this way, like we said. There's a great quote, or just a helpful quote, from Inc. magazine a few years ago. This very successful entrepreneur, it's just a good example of how this can affect everyone. He owns a very successful health food store in California, and even this guy, when he was being interviewed, felt like he didn't deserve the success that he had. And of course, it probably had to do with other people as well, and maybe their locations and some luck, but you just got to be better about selling yourself effectively and being not just confident, but being okay with saying, these are my strengths and this is what I bring to the table. So if you have any fears or concerns about that, or fears about sounding like you're bragging too much or being too arrogant, that's one of the things that you want to put down, that you want to start managing around and overcoming, okay? So in terms of managing your kind of internal obstacles and any limiting beliefs that you might have, this is just a great quote from Tiger Woods. We know that sports figures and just any other professional person like that, it requires a high performance, in their job, opera singer, whatever it is, that they do these mental exercises in order to be positive when they step onto the basketball court or go into the game or whatever it is. And we need to do the same thing with job searching. Does this mean that you're going to all of a sudden, love job searching? No, absolutely. That's not what we're talking about. But you want to be able to psych yourself up on a daily basis as much as possible and find, what is fun for you about job searching? Do you enjoy connecting with new people? Do you enjoy reading or learning about other people? And that might make it a little bit more fun and motivate you a little bit more. So try to find any nugget that's going to get you in a more positive mindset for your job search and to overcome any of these other obstacles. So if you take a look at this slide here, we talked about the rational fears or concerns already. You want to make a plan. You want to make a financial plan. Like if your transition, for example, if it's going to take about a year, you want to make a financial plan for that year so that you're prepared and ready to go. You want to have a plan for anything else outside yourself, for how to take care of your family, how to manage your kids, homeschooling and everything else. Deal with those rational fears, if you will, with a tangible, practical plan. This is where you have to be practical and rational about the whole thing. The irrational fears that you might have, here are some tricks and tools, and we'll talk a little bit more about these as we go too. But some of the things you can start to do with your fears, and some of these might sound kind of funny, but they're actually very effective. You can talk back to those fears a little bit. You can push them aside. You can just flat out ignore them. You can distract yourself with something else. So when you start to feel any of these fears or concerns or negative thinking coming up, the goal is not to spend a lot of time with them because it's wasted time. You need to move on to the next thing so that it's not holding you back and deal with them head on. Part of managing these obstacles is to ask for and get support from people in your support network, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment too. If you have to, stop watching the news because we all realize that it can be really negative. Watch something else. We've had clients get back into hobbies at home that they kind of put down and didn't, touch for a while at the beginning of COVID, and they need to find other things to do to kind of distract them away from the bad news and, get them in a more positive mental space. You can create affirmations that help you feel more positive. And you want to, by the way, in your transition plan, you don't want to just include, okay, here's the financial plan, here's what I need to do to update my resume, my skill set, et cetera. You also want to have a plan in there and action steps that you will take to manage your obstacles and fears. We had a client once, and I do want to go, I'm going to go to this next slide here so you can kind of read this while I'm telling this story. We had a client once, this is just how big those fears can be and get in your way, who was interviewing for a job, and it was the perfect job. She was so excited about it, and she actually knew, they were acquaintances of hers, the people that owned the company. And when she got to the end of the interview, they both realized that they couldn't pay her as much as she was making at her current position. And she came back to our coaching call and she said, I have to go back to the drawing board. They can't pay me enough. I can't take this job. I've just got to start all over again. That was her negative thinking, just, crawling all over her. And we talked about it, and I said, hold on a second. Go back to these people. You know them well enough. You can talk with them. Are there other options? Can they pay you a little bit more now and give you some stock options in the meantime? Can you start working with them part-time or contract work for 6 months and then reevaluate at that point? The negative thinking stops you from being more creative and being more assertive about coming up with different options that you could approach, whatever this career transition is for you. So in terms of managing negative thinking, there's a great book we wanted to recommend. If you take a look at this slide here, it's by Rick Carson. It's a quick, simple, easy read. You can buy it on Amazon. And we recommend it to almost all of our clients to help them manage around or get over their negative thinking so that they can be more creative and positive and therefore identify and take advantage of opportunities that are coming their way. Here's the basic gist of what the book gives you to manage around these negative thoughts. You want to identify what it's saying to you. And what Rick Carson says is the gremlin is kind of a negative inner voice in our head. And our first step is to identify what those voices are and what they're saying to us. Is it over and over about you're not qualified to get this next job that you're interested in, or you financially can't afford to make a change, or you should just be grateful to have a job, it's coronavirus right now? You want to identify what that tape recorder is, if you will, playing over and over in your head. And then you can start to manage it once you've identified it more clearly. And these are some options here to start to manage around it. You can talk back to it. One of the things our clients will do is they'll set a time to talk back to that voice later, and then of course they forget to do so, so they've pushed it aside. Some funny things that some clients have done, just kind of in their head or thinking about it, is can set it on a vacation, a really long one around the world. It's, you're not available to talk. Give it a long spreadsheet to work on. Push it aside or do something else like we said. The key here at the very bottom of this slide is we want you to start to notice, and you can kind of track your time for the next couple of days with your gremlins, for example, is to notice how much time you spend thinking about these negative thoughts or listening to the gremlin. And then what our clients will realize after doing this exercise is they'll start to realize how much time they are wasting kind of wallowing in or thinking about or listening to these negative thoughts, and instead use that energy and that time towards your job search, towards action steps. Some other things that you can do to help overcome your obstacles and improve your confidence with your job search as well, and I'll tell you this quick story about client Beth here in just a moment, is to interview other people about your strengths. This will help you in multiple ways. Number one, it will help validate the strengths that you feel like you have. Number two, it will boost your confidence. Number three, it will also give you some good kind of language to use to sell yourself in your job search, because the way people talk about your strengths is a really good way to, use that language on your resume, for example, or maybe even on LinkedIn. They can help you wordsmith things a little bit, okay? So interviewing others about what your strengths are serves multiple really good purposes. You can write some affirmations, one or two, and put them on your bathroom mirror for more positive thinking. One of the things we will also have our clients do to help boost their confidence is to write down all of their accomplishments since childhood. And then the last two things on the list is one of the things to think about related to confidence, whether it's job searching or anything else, is we all have confidence. The confidence is like a muscle that you have to work out and develop on a regular basis. You can't just let it sit there and atrophy. You need to do things to boost it on a consistent basis, whether it's taking new classes, it's taking on a new challenge at work, or taking small risks every day. That's the one that's listed on the slide here. We will tell an introverted client, for example, push yourself to speak up more at your meetings virtually on a regular basis. And taking those small risks, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone on a consistent basis helps boost your confidence. So keep that one in mind as well. And then finally, another thing that helps you with your attitude, but also with your confidence, is paying attention to your physical body, like posture or your position at work. And there's a really interesting, good TED Talk on body language. The link here is at the bottom. And it talks about how our body movement and position and how we're sitting and leveraging our hands, et cetera, how it impacts not just how we're coming across, but how we feel about ourselves. So pay attention to your body posture and language as well. There are lots of things that you can do to improve your confidence and your mindset as well. For example, a podcast. We've got lots of clients who have different music playlists for different purposes, so that's another good one too. Client Beth, just a quick example, and then we'll move on. She was a great example. She worked at Home Depot, very high up in marketing there, senior level position. She happened to not have a college degree, and it was something that gave her a sense of this imposter syndrome. She always felt like her success was because her boss was nice to her and she got lucky. We pushed her outside of her comfort zone, did the things that we're talking about today with her, and she applied for a job and secured a position. She was in Atlanta at the time at Home Depot, a huge step up in promotion for her and a transition working at Sears, moved her whole family up there because she was able to take these steps and kind of get out of her own way. So she's at that job, absolutely loves it, and it may have been the parent company for Sears. Point being, it was a huge raise for her in promotion. So really, at the end of the day, she just had to get out of her own way, and that's what we want you all to be thinking about. So a couple of things, because we realize that COVID may feel like a very big obstacle for you all, and we totally understand that. We want you to think about, related to your transition, a couple of things in order to be practical about what the right timing is for you to make this transition. You want to kind of, and I'm going to move, sorry guys, hold on. I just want to move a little bit because the sun shifts as we're going here in my office. You want to read the room, so to speak, of your organization and your industry, like what's going on within your industry and your organization specifically. Are things kind of neutral, staying the course, and you feel like I just need to stay put for a while, but maybe I'm going to take a class or two to get ready for making the transition in the new year. That may be a viable option for you, and you'll feel better because you're doing something to move towards it versus just staying still. Is your organization struggling? So you really need to stay put for a little while longer, or you're concerned about being furloughed, so you've got to get your job search going right away because you're concerned something might happen. Or is your company thriving and you're like, gosh, I would really like to stay here, but maybe I just need to transition into a different department that would be more rewarding for me. So you want to think about kind of what the state of the union is, so to speak, to help you make your plans. The second thing that you want to think about is if this is not the right time for you to make your transition, which we totally understand, you want to say, okay, I'm going to look at it again in the new year. But in the meantime, is there something I can ask for or I can work towards that would make me feel a little bit more fulfilled and have my job better suit me in the meantime? Could it be asking for a little bit more flex time, or just flex time in my schedule? A title change, a small bonus, different projects that I want to be working on? Do I need to just flat out have more connection with my coworkers, and that will make me happier? A lot of our clients are telling us they don't like their job as much anymore because they realize that a lot of what they liked about it was that interaction with their coworkers and the coworkers themselves. So in some cases, you may need to say, what's going to make me happy right now so I can stay the course for a little bit longer and stay put until it is the right time to make the change. And finally, you may be saying to yourself, I need to just transition into another organization or industry, but stay within the same role so that my transition isn't as much of a risk or as big of a change. And you may say to yourself, okay, I'm going to sit tight for 6 months and then reevaluate at that point. This is where the practicality needs to come into play. But the point is that you will feel more in control and better if you proactively make a plan versus just sitting there waiting for something to happen. That's the most frustrating thing. So tip number 2 is to work towards preparing your materials, because this will help you get over any fears or concerns that you have and any obstacles too. Nobody likes to update their resume. This is kind of the same case. I've probably had maybe a handful of people tell me in 20 years, like, oh, I like revising my resume. Not that many, but there are some. The deal with revising your resume and your LinkedIn is that it will help you boost your confidence. It will help you identify transferable skills, which are critical for making a transition, and obviously just get you ready for your job search. So there are 5 things that we want you to think about first and use it as a checklist for updating your resume, okay? In terms of your resume specifically, and then we'll talk about LinkedIn for just a moment, your resume needs to have a contemporary format. Resumes look pretty these days. It needs to brand you effectively. You need to have a summary at the top. It needs to be relevant for the position and only have content on there that is relevant for the jobs that you're looking for or applying to. And you need to make sure that your employment history is very results-oriented. Here's an example on this slide of a more contemporary formatted resume. Resumes these days, they'll have some color sometimes. They'll have different columns. So just know that if your resume looks a little bit old school and like it was done in, 1980 or like on a typewriter almost, so to speak, I'm sure none of us are that old, but you get the point. You want to work on making it a more contemporary format. It will make you feel better and it will help you stand out from the crowd. The next thing that we want you to be thinking about too and working on is an example on this slide is having some sort of summary at the top that summarizes who you are as a professional and your value proposition, okay? And you'll notice here too that this really brands this person. You know right out of the box that he is a marketing and communications strategist. And these are some of the things that he's really good at, okay? So you do need to have a summary like this at the top and ideally a bulleted list of relevant qualifications and skills. This will, again, help you feel more confident and make your transition be smoother, and also make you feel like, okay, wait, if I rework my resume a little bit, I actually am more qualified for these particular jobs than I thought I was. When you're wanting to identify what your transferable skills are, or thinking about, okay, how do I make this transition to the next step here, to the next job or career path, one of the things you absolutely need to do is identify what your top transferable skills are that would go from, okay, for example, if I've been doing project management or in some way, shape, or form in healthcare, can I still leverage those project management skills in a different type of industry? It's the same skill set, it's just a different type of project. So you want to have and review your resume with a coach, a friend, or a mentor, a family member, and interview them, ask them what they see are the transferable skills from your resume. Because a lot of times someone objective looking at it with you can help you identify what those are more easily than you, because you're inside of your head. The last thing that you want to do to identify these transferable skills is to analyze about 5 or 6 job postings and compare them to each other so that you not only understand what those qualifications are kind of across the board, but go line by line with those job descriptions. And what things could you viably say or realistically say, I can do those things. I just need to reword it, or say it in a different way on my resume, okay? The other way that you can start to identify transferable skills is to use these categories here. These are leadership skills that Development Dimensions International, very highly regarded management consulting firm, they assert are the most important leadership skills in today's economy. You can use these and say, okay, here are 10 skills. Do I have skill set or leadership or these leadership strengths? This can help you understand what some of your strengths are leadership-wise that could translate over. Basically, you rate yourself in each area and identify those top skills, okay? So that can give you like a template, if you will. And then finally, as you saw a few slides ago with his kind of branded header at the top of his resume, you want to make sure that the beginning, the top half of your resume above the fold is going to brand you effectively and sell you effectively. You want to have your transferable skills there at that top part. You want to have your leadership strengths there as well, the value that you provide or would provide to a prospective employer, and the results that you have achieved for other organizations. So put some results-oriented bullet points there at the top, so they can see what you've accomplished during the course of your career. If any of you feel like you're not really certain about your strengths and you would like a little bit more information about that, we, by the way, highly recommend the StrengthsFinder assessment, strengthsfinder.com. It's about $20. You get some really good, not just your top 5 strengths, but a lot of really good information about those strengths and language that you could use on your resume and during an interview, okay? So if you need help with your value proposition and your brand, we help clients with that as well all the time. We'd be happy to help you guys with that too. One of the things that I did want to mention, and then we'll talk about LinkedIn and our final tip here before we get to Q&A, is that on your resume and in LinkedIn as well, because COVID has impacted so many people, it is okay to reference something if you have a gap in employment because you've been furloughed or laid off. You can reference and mention that it's due to COVID. Here's an example on this slide here. You can just say your department was eliminated or the project was placed on hold due to COVID-19. If any of you are really concerned about this gap in history here, go ahead and put that on your resume. It's completely acceptable to do so, and you can reference that in your cover letter and on your LinkedIn as well, if any of you had a question about that, okay? And one quick thing I should say about LinkedIn is LinkedIn is incredibly important to your job search these days, everyone. We still have clients asking us or saying, gosh, I'm a novice at this, and we really do want you to work on it. It can be in baby steps over time. You can start just working on your profile over time, and this can be an action step that you take if you say, I'm going to start looking in the next year or next year. But one of the things about LinkedIn that is kind of newer these days and important is to start to think about putting a picture behind your head, because you can change that banner and not just having that regular blue banner that is normally there. for LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn expert creates these branded banners for people and uploads it for them. We think this is just fantastic. This is an example of one that she did with one of our clients. And then you want to make sure that you've got good keywords under your name here that sell you and brand you as well. And then work towards, over time, everyone, making your LinkedIn profile 100% complete by filling in your skills section, by getting recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. Just set a goal to get more familiar with LinkedIn over time, because it is really critical for your search these days. If anyone would like more information about getting help with your LinkedIn, I'd be happy to speak with you about that. Our packages include the banner. You need the SEO, which is search engine optimize your LinkedIn profile. You want that to be in your header and in your about section, and have your experience section on LinkedIn be very results oriented, like we said too. Okay, so reach out to us if you'd like more information about that. Our final tip here is, as you've gotten prepared and you've started to overcome your fears and started to manage those obstacles, you need to then start, implementing your plan, obviously. So one of the things that we really want you to do, because this will help you stay accountable, but also overcome or deal with any of those fears and negative thinking and any other obstacles. If you need someone to brainstorm, like, is there a way I could get a side gig to get some more money coming in and get experience for this next job that I'm interested in? Like, can you brainstorm ideas with me about this? This is where your support network can come in so handy and useful. So we want you to get support not just for overcoming the obstacles and staying on track, but for getting creative ideas about how to manage your transition effectively. So take some coffee breaks with people, set up weekly check-ins with different people in your support network. This is also a good time to start expanding your network. People are networking during COVID, by the way, and we are not telling people stop your job search and don't do anything. We're telling them go full force with it. Just remember that people are a little bit busier, so networking-wise, they may not get back to you as quickly as they normally would. Pretend it's like holiday time where people might be a little bit distracted, but do not stop it. All of our clients are full force with their job search, as they should be. So continue to expand your network and start with places and people that you know. University alumni through TCU, leverage your alumni network. They did not pay me to say this. We say this to all of our clients. Look at or reconnect with coworkers in your past and present jobs, friends and family members. Identify like 3 or 4 people so you can spread the wealth a little bit that you can get support from during this time of transition and get these ideas, okay? Identify or leverage a mentor if you already have one to help you with your job search. Obviously, if it's, a mentor that's going to help you with job search for leaving your organization, you want to have a mentor outside of that organization. Leverage a career coach. Set up regular meetings with them. So we are curious, and I might say the whole 3 here, but don't worry about the number. How many people have a support system they leverage regularly? Go ahead and fill that out for us. This is great. And by the way, everyone, we want you to schedule, like, in addition to having as part of your plan, how am I going to manage my obstacles, we also want you to have in your plan, how am I going to leverage my network, and set a goal to communicate with people regularly. So it looks like, Brooke, we've got 50-50, give or take. Yeah, so a little bit more people are saying no, and some people are saying yes. So the people that are saying no, we want you to boost this, and the people that already do. During career transition, you want to have as much support as you can, so we would ask you to increase it and over-communicate versus under-communicate with your support network about what you need help with and how often you want to talk with them, okay? Finally, we want you to identify and establish clear goals, I should say. Identify your target industries, companies, and job titles so that you know where you're going and work towards this. Even if right now is not the time to make the change, you can start working on your goals and what the timeline is that's realistic for you, okay? We typically tell people kind of a rule of thumb is for every $10,000 that you're asking for in salary, it is give or take around 1 month of searching. Now, I know some of you might say, oh my gosh, I don't have 8 months to search, it needs to be faster. Don't let that be depressing to you. Just realize that it's going to take a little bit of time for your search, and it will make a difference how assertive you are with your networking and applying for jobs, obviously. We want you to have very clear goals about where you're going, and we are curious in this last poll here. And Brooke, do we have this last poll? If you're clear about what your next job target is. Let me look at this too, because yes, we do. Okay, yay. This is on my end, everyone. I got the numbering wrong with the polls, and it was one of those things, brain freeze there. Our ideal career model on the slide here is the thing that we would like you to leverage. You can print it out and use it after we're done today, but we'd like you to leverage this to help you figure out what your next job target would be. What career do you want to transition into? This will serve as your checklist to think about, okay, what is the right job? What's going to be fulfilling to me? What am I going to enjoy? How do I want to leverage my strengths? What's the right compensation, work environment, and the right work environment and organization for my personality type? So with our clients, we go into a lot of depth with these to help them figure out their long-term career direction. You can start to use that as kind of a checklist to evaluate your current options that you're thinking about now and start to dig in deeper with it to determine your long-term direction. So far, we've got no is 58% on the poll that they don't know their next direction. So for you all, you really want to leverage this model. This will be one of the first things that you want to do. And the people that are saying yes, go ahead and use it as well, just to make sure that you're on the right track, okay? So use this career model as your checklist to kind of walk through each of your ideas and make sure that you're thinking about the right things over time, okay? All right, so let's start to move to our Q&A here, okay? So I have just a couple more thoughts, but Brooke, if you can start kind of watching the Q&A box there and keeping track of who asked questions. We're happy to do that. Okay, good, awesome. So we're happy to do a quick free consult with you if you want additional advice, everyone, and if you'd like to learn a little bit more about coaching, happy to do that. And one last thought, and then I want to get through this really quickly because I want to get to the Q&A, is I want you to think about, and let me get to this one actually really quickly too. I want you to think about what your 30, 60, 90-day goals need to be for your search. I want you to include all of these items on the slide here in the plan, please. And make sure that you create a daily and weekly schedule for your search so that you're being organized and consistent with all of your action steps. Okay, good. All right, Brooke, so if you can field them for me, that would be great.
Absolutely. The first question is, I heard females think they need to have 100% of the requirements listed in the job description in order to apply, but males don't think this. How many of the requirements should we meet before applying?
I have heard this too, and I think it's entirely accurate, and it's just a difference in probably personality type and, you know, all of that. So our kind of rule of thumb is we think you can stretch it just a little bit because we feel like most people discount what they do well and also are not giving themselves enough credit for what they actually do well. So I would say between like 75 and 80%. So if you meet about 75% of the requirements, give or take, and you feel like you could learn the rest and figure it out pretty quickly, that's what I would go for as kind of a general rule of thumb. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Any others so far?
Got another one here for you. Is how often would you suggest that I refresh my skill set?
Yes, so that's a great question. So I would want you to evaluate your skill set quarterly, just so that you have a sense of, okay, this quarter, do I need to do something new or not? Because I don't feel like we need to refresh it necessarily quarterly, but at least evaluate it. But I would say twice a year is the short answer to, you know, refresh it and make sure you're staying on top of whatever it is. So halfway through the year and at the beginning of each new year.
Great. The next question is, what if you have been laid off from an industry that's not likely coming back anytime soon?
Yep. So identify what industries are either related or similar to the industry that you've been in. the vendors to that industry, what industries work with or serve the industry that is not going to be coming back. So similar or related, and ones that serve that industry, that can give you some initial ideas about other options to brainstorm. Great question. I'm trying to look here too at the same time and go back up.
Question came up in the chat saying, will the presentation be available to download too? Yes, I don't know if you're questioning about the recording or the actual slides. If you would like a copy of the presentation, the slides that Hallie, okay, yes, the slides, you'll want to contact Hallie at halliecrawford.com. There's an admin email. Hallie, if you want to share that in the chat, I think it's admin@halliecrawford.com.
Yep.
Slides. We're going to post the full recording on hornfrogsconnect.com, which I put that in the chat as well, which is kind of our TCU exclusive alumni networking platform. It brings a lot of great resources for alumni together, job search function that works with our career center, and additionally allows you to share jobs if you know that your team is hiring or you've heard of a position that maybe you aren't interested in and you want to share that information. That's a great space. Frog entrepreneurs can share their businesses. You connect with alumni from your former schools and colleges. We relaunched the platform in June of this last summer, and so we're very excited because we're bringing students onto the platform and they are looking for guidance and resources from alumni who have blazed the trails for them to say, how do I get to where you are? Or, I see that you worked at this company. Can you give me your perspective? So it's kind of an exciting space to be in right now.
That's great. That's great advice, because informational interviews are a great way, everyone, just piggybacking on what Brooke said, to, get a sense of how do I put my best foot forward in this industry? What are organizations and companies looking for, So talking with as many people as possible, you want to put that into your daily schedule and your weekly goals to make sure that you're doing, certain things over and over on a regular routine basis, but talking to as many people as possible. That's really critically important. Any other questions?
You want to there is that last question in the chat? It's all about you there.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much, Brooke. I see Michael asked about does TCU provide some basic services with resume, interview, LinkedIn help, or is it all through a third party? And Michael and everyone, we do offer in the Career Center services with resume development, interview coaching. I will put a link in the chat. We just put together a resources section just for alumni with a sample resume guide. Big Interview is a new interview practice platform, tips for career changers who are entering the workforce. So there is a platform just for alumni at TCU to start with those questions. You can also schedule appointments with me through Handshake as well.
Awesome. That's great. And here's our contact information if you'd like the slides, everybody, and have any additional questions that you think of later on in the next couple of weeks even. We'd be happy to respond and answer those for you, no problem at all. Yay, good. People are saying very helpful. Very cool. So the last thing that I just want to share before we go, everyone, is, and just in case we have any other questions here, we'll still look out for it before we wrap up, but just wanted to remind you to take this in baby steps. Remember my story about how it took a while, but if you, think about it, it was like step by step. Okay, figuring out the direction first, then working on my materials, then networking with people, et cetera, et cetera. We realized that it can feel very overwhelming. So just, break it down into chunks and plan it out, and that will help you take action and move forward just, instead of just staying stagnant and freaked out and worried. So break it down into baby steps. That would be my final thought.
We just got two really good questions here in the Q&A.
Okay,
one
good.
is, how do we know when it's time to go back to school? Considering starting my MBA, I'm not sure what kind of career I'm looking to transition to at this point. How do we know when it's time to go back?
Yeah, right. So here's what I would say is I would think about your long-term direction first and decide if the MBA is the right way to go for that. So I know that some people will go back to school when they're not sure because it's kind of something to do in the meantime, and obviously an MBA is a very marketable, thing to have. But my ideal would be to identify if that's the right step first. This is a really good time to go back to school just in general because, like we said, the economy is a little bit more, difficult and tenuous, but I also don't want someone to just go get their MBA and then think it's this magic ticket to whatever it is that they want to do and then look back and say, not really sure that that was the right path to take. So decide on your direction first, and then sooner than later, absolutely a great time. And then I can actually see the next question here, Brooke, is what is the best way to respond to job hopping and show that I'm committed to staying long term? So I would reference something in your cover letter about this and explain to them up front why you're interested in this position for the long run, that you do feel it will be a challenge. You've thought about this, and this is, where you'd like to be at this organization or in this role and in the long run. So I would reference that up front in your cover letter, but also when you're emailing with the hiring manager, just mention that at every point that you possibly can. In terms of when you're communicating with the prospective employer so that they know that this is, where you want to stay. And some of your response, by the way, could be a little bit of, I've had these different jobs in part because I didn't know what I wanted to do in the long run. And now I've taken this time to really figure it out. So now I'm clear. So you can also kind of explain what happened at the previous jobs too. That can help as well. All right, good. I think we're good.
I'm not seeing any other questions. It looks like we're right on. Oh, wait, one more here. I'm in my 50s and I'm wanting to do something different, new and exciting in a different phase of life. Is it possible?
It absolutely is. It's a great question. It's absolutely possible. Of course, there are challenges, just like anything else, being concerned about ageism and that kind of thing. But look, we're all working much later in our lives than we were before for so many different reasons. So it absolutely is possible. You need to get clear on your direction first, sell yourself effectively and why your age is actually an asset. And making the transition, though, it absolutely is. We've had clients in that age bracket, if you will, make transitions all the time. So definitely possible.
Awesome.
And I think that's a good one to end on.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us on your maybe lunch hour for some of you. I know we have people calling in from all over. And thank you again, Hallie. Hallie is actually going to be back with us next month. I'll put this link here in the chat. She's going to be back here in November for kind of a leadership skills workshop. It's 10 coaching skills every leader should master. And so really great to kind of continue to develop that skill set and think about what you can do to improve in that area. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hallie. Great to see you.
Very welcome.
Happy Thursday. Remember, it's Thursday, everyone.